The sun had turned the gravel walks to white fire, and the Duke of Greywick, on his knees in a borrowed coat with dirt under his nails, had just decided that not one soul on his own estate would lift a hand to help a dying man before a young woman knelt beside him in the rose bed and pressed a tin dipper of water into his blistered grip. "Drink slow," she said. "You've let the heat take you. No sense gulping it back up again." Dominic drank. The water was cool from the deep well, and it ran down his chin and into 3 days of stubble he had let grow on purpose, and over a collar grey with sweat he had earned on purpose, and he watched her over the rim of the dipper and could not for the life of him understand why she had stopped. He had been 3 weeks among his own people now, and not one of them had looked at him twice. That had been the entire point. A duke who arrives in a carriage learns nothing. Every face turns to him like a flower to noon. Every word is honey, every bow is a lie told with the spine. So he had come quietly in the spring, before the household was warned of his return, in the clothes of a man who needed work, and he had told the steward only that he was a gardener come up from the south, and the steward, who had never once seen his master's face up close, had set him to the rose beds and forgotten him. In 3 weeks he had learned a great deal. He had learned which footman pocketed his wine. He had learned that his housekeeper wept at night for a son gone for a soldier. He had learned that the men of fashion who wrote him such fond letters spoke of him, when they thought no gentleman was near, as a cold purse to be bled. And he had learned that a man on his knees in the dirt is, to nearly everyone, not a man at all but a fixture, like a sundial or a gate, to be stepped past and never seen. Everyone but her. "You're new," she said, settling back on her heels. She had a smudge of flour on her wrist and a plain grey gown gone soft at the cuffs, and a that was not beautiful in the way the season's bells were taught to be beautiful, but was something better, something he had no word ready for. "I've seen you at the far beds. You work too long in the sun and you don't stop to eat. That's why you went down." "And you noticed," he said. His voice came out rougher than the gardener's, and he made himself soften it. Hard not to notice a great tall fellow keeling over into the Duke's roses. She smiled, and it changed her whole face. "Wait here. Don't be proud about it." She rose and went, and Dominic, the Duke of Greywick, master of 40,000 acres and a house with 140 rooms, did as a housemaid told him and waited. She came back with bread folded in a cloth and a wedge of yellow cheese, and she sat with him in the thin shade of the wall while he ate, as though she had all the time in the world and not a single mistress above who would dock her wages for it. Her name, she said, was Rosamund Kerr. She had been at Greywick since she was 15. She did the linens and the lamps and whatever else the upper servants did not care to stoop to, and she liked the gardens best of all the places in the world, because no one up at the great house ever thought to look for her there. "You'd think a man with all this would walk in it," she said, looking out over the roses that ran in their long, hot rows down to the stable yard. "They say the Duke's hard. They say he never smiles. I'd smile, if it were mine. I'd come out every morning just to see the dew on it." "Perhaps," Dominic said carefully, "he has reasons to be hard." Perhaps. She considered it without rancour. Or perhaps no one's ever brought him his water and made him sit down. She glanced at him sidelong, and there was something quick and warm in it. "Eat. You've gone the colour of the wall." So it began, though he did not at first let himself call it a beginning. He found, in the days that followed, that he timed the worst of his work to the hour she crossed the lower garden with her basket of mending or her armful of cut stems for the rooms above. He found that he had stopped resenting the dirt and the heat. He found that when she did not come, when her duties kept her at the house through a long grey afternoon, the day went flat and overlong, and he caught himself looking up the path far more often than a man should look a path for a housemaid he was not even meant to know. She brought him water every day. That was the thing of it. Not once, not as a single Christian kindness to be remembered and set aside, but every single day, in the worst of the heat, without being asked and without expecting thanks. She would appear at the end of the row with the tin dipper full and cold, and she would stand over him until he drank it, and scold him gently if he had let himself go too long, and then she would be gone again to her thankless work in the great cold house. She did it for the under-gardeners too, and for the stable boy, and once for a tinker who came to the kitchen door. She did it, he understood at last, because she could not pass a thirsty creature and do nothing. It was simply who she was when she believed no one of consequence was watching. There was no one of more consequence on the whole estate than the man kneeling in her path. She did not know it. That was what undid him. He had come to Greywick to learn who was true, and he had his answer, and the answer had a smudge of flour on its wrist. One evening near the end of August, when the light had gone gold and long and the bees had quieted, she found him not working but standing at the end of the rose walk, very still, looking at the house. "You'll be turned off, you know," she said, coming up beside him, "if Mr. Hollis catches you idle. He's not a kind man, our steward." She followed his gaze up to the great lit windows. "Are you wishing you were grand, then, up there, with the wine and the candles?" "No," Dominic said, "I am wishing I were honest." She laughed a little, not understanding. "You're the most honest man on this estate. You work like the devil and you say thank you, and you've never once tried to flatter me out of my good sense." "Rosamond," he turned to her. His heart, which had carried him cold through 100 ballrooms and a dozen funerals and not moved once, was hammering like a boy's. "I have to tell you something, and you will not like the way I went about it, and I will understand if you are angry. But I cannot let you bring me one more dipper of water without your knowing who you have been kind to." A small line came between her brows. "You're frightening me. What is it? Are you in trouble? Have you done something?" "I have deceived you." Every day for a month. He drew himself up, and it was the strangest thing. He would think later how the body remembers what it is, how 3 weeks of stooping fell off him in a single breath, and his shoulders came back and his chin came up, and he stood, for the first time on his own ground in months, as the man he had been born. "I am no gardener. There is no gardener come up from the south. There never was." She had gone very still. "My name is Dominic," he said. "I am the Duke of Greywick. This is my house. These are my roses. And you," his voice caught, and he let it. "He was done hiding. You are the only soul on all of it who ever once brought me water, without first counting what it might be worth." For a long moment she did not move at all. The gold light lay over the both of them. Somewhere down in the stable a horse stamped and was quiet. Then she did something he had not expected and would treasure to the end of his days. She did not curtsy, and she did not stammer, and she did not turn pale and beg pardon for her boldness. She looked at him, really looked, at the firm jaw she had watched go slack with heat stroke, at the dark eyes she had scalded, at the work-roughened hands she had pressed a dipper into, and she said, in a voice that shook only a little, "Then I've been very rude to a duke." "You have been," he said, and a laugh broke out of him, helpless and glad, the only true thing in my whole life. "I called your gardens better wasted on you." "You did." "I made you sit in the dirt and eat my bread." "I shall never eat better as long as I live." Her eyes were bright now, too bright, and she pressed the back of her flour-smudged wrist to her mouth, and he saw the moment she understood that the man she had been kind to could now, with a word, change her whole small life, and that she was, of all things, afraid of it. "You'll send me away now," she said. "It wouldn't be proper, a duke and his housemaid, the two of us laughing in his garden. They'd talk. You'll have to send me off and find me a place somewhere, and that'll be the kind thing, and that'll be the end of it." She lifted her chin, and oh, she was brave, braver than every titled coward who had ever flattered him. "I won't cry about it. You don't owe me anything. I'd have brought you the water just the same." "I know you would." That was the whole of it, in 5 words. "That is why I am not going to send you anywhere." He took the dipper gently from her hand. She had been holding it the whole while, full and forgotten, and he set it on the low wall, and he took both her work-worn hands in both of his. "I have spent my life," he said, "among people who would empty an ocean over me if they thought it would buy a smile, and let me die of thirst in the dust the moment they thought I could do nothing for them. I did not believe there was a single person left in the world who would be kind to a man for no reason but that he was a man and thirsty and on his knees. And then a girl I had never met knelt down in my roses and gave me her own water and her own bread and her own scolding, and asked me for nothing, and did it again the next day, and the next." His thumbs moved over her knuckles, over the calluses her hard, kind life had given her. "Rosamund Kerr, I am the Duke of Greywick, and I have my pick of every drawing-room in the kingdom, and I would not trade one dipper of your water for the lot of them. I am asking you to stay, not as a maid, not below the stairs. I am asking you to be the lady of the house that you said you would walk every morning to see the dew." She stared at him. A tear got loose at last and went down through the smudge of flour, and she laughed at the same time, the wet, helpless laugh of a person whose whole world has just turned over in the gold light. "You're mad," she whispered. "They'll all say you're mad." "They will," he agreed, "and I shall not hear a word of it over the sound of you scolding me for working too long in the sun. I'd have to scold you a great deal. You're hopeless. You went down right into the rose bed." "Then scold me," said the Duke of Greywick, drawing her hands up to his lips. "Every day for the rest of my life. I find I cannot do without it." He kissed her hands, both of them, where they were roughened from his linens and his lamps, and the bees went on among the late roses, and far up at the great house the candles were being lit in the long windows of a home that had been cold for a very long time and would not be cold again. They were married before the leaves turned. The fine world talked, of course, as the fine world does. The Duke of Greywick did not hear a syllable of it. He was in his garden, most mornings, walking the rose walk with his Duchess on his arm in the early dew, and if a guest ever remarked on the curious old tin dipper that hung, polished bright, in a place of honor in the great hall where another man might have hung his arms, the Duke would only smile, which they said he never did, and answer that it was the most valuable thing he owned. "It cost me nothing," he would say, drawing his wife a little closer. "A cup of water, freely given. I have looked all my life, and I never found anything in the world worth more."